a trip to Insanity Island. And we are live.
Oh my gosh, another exciting episode of Insanity Island. It's insane.
Except for me, where am I at?
Look at you, man. Georgia.
Oh,
Pendo.
there we go.
Okay, all right. So a little announcement to our faithful viewing and listening audience. We have a surprise guest today.
Golf clap. Golf clap.
We have with us the former Man of the Year, University of Georgia, 1991, Richard Sheffield.
Yo! Woohoo! Woohoo!
Richard, why don't you say a few words?
Ready.
Go Dogs. Based in Atlanta, live in Cumming, Georgia, a native Georgian, and Tim and I were fraternity brothers at UGA. So any of the audience who's looking for dirt on Tim Mitchell, I'm your man. I have quite a lot. I've known Tim since I was 18, and happy to help smear Tim in the public eye as much as possible.
Excellent. Don't forget about Pendo. We got to smear him too.
I like being smeared. It makes me feel warm inside.
Okay. All right. So in the news last week, we got some items to discuss here. We got some a very interesting development. Pendo, do you remember when Donald Trump's personal residence at Mar-a-Lago was raided by the FBI? Do you remember that?
No, when did that happen? I've never heard about that.
And what was that for? Why did they do that?
Well, I'm sure the reason they did it was for wonderful altruistic reasons, because they're as pure as the wind-driven snow.
Yeah. Richard, why did the FBI raid Donald Trump's personal residence at Mar-a-Lago in Florida? Why did they do that?
Donald Trump acknowledged that he had documents that he had carried with him from his time as president, was keeping some of those at his residence, and you would have thought, he would have been selling nuclear secrets to the Iranians or something.
MSNBC tried to say that that's what he was doing.
Yeah.
No
and
evidence at all.
then a lot of people in the media, a lot of Democrats suggest that because of that, Donald Trump should be, indicted and maybe imprisoned. Is that true? I ask you, Richard Sheffield.
It is true. I mean, and perhaps there would be reasons for that, because one should not be keeping presidential confidential documents, at least in unsecured places. So no argument from me there. And apparently there have been quite a lot of debate about, and discussions fairly, between the Trump, let's call it sort of post-presidency group, whatever you would call that kind of thing, and the Justice Department over returning some of those documents. And so at some point, the DOJ got frustrated with the pace of that discussion and proceeded to recover those documents by raiding Trump's personal home and going through not just his papers, but going through his wife's closet, going through
His son's toys,
clothing drawers, desks, things like that. And they took those documents away. They
Okay.
But there is a big difference between the two.
Before we get into that, Chris, I want to bring up a point, but we'll get to that. We'll get to that in just a minute. So last week, after I think it's almost 2 months of discovering this by his own attorneys, actually, Joe Biden.
Yeah. Hey, do they have classified? Can they look at those things?
Joe Biden, when he was vice president, has walked out of the White House with classified documents, stored them in his garage next to his Corvette, and this was all leaked to the media last week. And suddenly, it's like crickets. Suddenly, where are all the people saying that's a crime?
Well, Joy Behar.
Where are all the people now? I ask you, Chris Pendarvis.
Joy Behar said, "Well, there's a big difference between the two."
What's the difference? The difference is, I'll tell you the difference.
No, she's right.
The difference is They were actually
let me
classified
finish.
documents
Oh, let me finish.
under Trump. They were declassified, but yes. Go
Jim,
ahead.
I got this. What Trump had were documents pertaining to Operation Hurricane, which was a freaking coup against him. He wanted to make sure that those documents didn't just disappear, so he kept copies of them. He had a good legal reason to do that. And he also had a really good reason to think the same FBI that attempted the coup might plant evidence on him. Why wouldn't they? They attempted a freaking coup. Joe, his were top secret, classified stuff about Iran, China, and the Ukraine, all where his son was doing illegal stuff. So he was protecting his own little ass so he could keep doing his little crime stuff. Trump was trying to make sure that they didn't get away with another one. But don't worry, Joe had it in a garage next to his Corvette. So everything's all right.
That's a very good point. That's a very good
Not only
point.
that, his stuff was top secret. I found out that you can have the vice president, after 9/11, they made it where the vice president can classify and declassify his own stuff that his own office has done.
Okay, fair enough.
But he does not have the right to stuff the president. He cannot classify or declassify top secret stuff that the president has done. And I think that's what he's got.
Okay, well,
It said top secret on it. It wasn't
it
classified from the office of the vice president. I don't think he's supposed to have these things.
He's really stepped in. It's going to be really interesting. Now,
But don't
okay,
worry,
so,
the DOJ is investigating.
Well,
Oh, yeah.
and just to clarify a couple of points here.
our
before-
totally impartial Department of Justice, by the way, right?
But before we go on with this, so first, it isn't just in the garage next to his Corvette,
You're right. I forgot.
in a house where, by the way, his son Hunter was paying the
drug addict.
Yeah, Hunter, when he wasn't painting, was writing over $49,000 checks to his dad a month for rent. Now,
Oh, that's
Now, what's that number for the rental month?
almost $50,000 a month. Now, I don't know.
$600,000 a year. That's a lot of money. That's real money.
It is a lot of money, and that's after the bank fees for transferring those funds from foreign governments have to be paid, of course. So that might be a little bit less, but nonetheless, Joe's getting paid almost 50 grand a month by his son. Now, I don't know how many of you in our listening audience have ever rented a house from your parents. Probably, at some point in time, we've all
Pretty low number.
we've all lived with our parents. We've all, it's maybe many people these days have moved back in after they are going into adulthood. They've had to move
Happens a lot.
back in briefly.
Happens a lot.
I've had my children have had to move back in with me at different times of their life. I have never charged $50,000 a month rent to my kids. Now,
What kind of evil father are you?
I might live in a house that's
Come
not
on.
quite as nice as one of Joe's houses, but the big guy clearly doesn't love his son Hunter as much as we thought he did, because that's a whole lot of money. The other thing that's true about this story is that it isn't just in the garage, but there were at least two other places, including another residence and an office, and then also the presidential or the vice presidential library, rather, whatever that is. I mean, maybe not the library, but it was like a Joe Biden.
You talking about University of Pennsylvania? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah. So it's some sort of like library where these documents were also found. Now, every time they've been attributed to lawyers finding these documents, but I don't know how many lawyers are just digging around a garage in one of Hunter Biden's houses. So,
Okay,
Do they have clearance to look at these things?
I mean, obviously someone else other than a lawyer found them.
Okay,
And-
well, the way I understand how this was exposed in the first place is Joe Biden's own personal attorney approached the archives with, hey, maybe we have a problem, maybe we don't, because we just want to disclose that we have classified documents in my client's personal garage. So it's interesting. Okay, would this had happened had the raid at Mar-a-Lago never occurred? I ask you, Richard Sheffield.
Well, Tim, you said it was you said that it was actually two months ago. It's actually was before this was
Yeah.
known before the election. So this goes back to October of 2022 when this was discovered at least, as far as we know. Now, what I would suggest to you is that it clearly creates conflicts with the Biden office, who had already appointed a special prosecutor to investigate Donald Trump. So their hands were really tied. They had to appoint a special prosecutor to also now investigate Joe Biden, because it's the exact same thing. But really,
At
what's
worse,
troubling more than anything is this repeated claim on the part of the Biden administration that they are being transparent about this, when in fact they're not. They were transparent perhaps by disclosing this to the DOJ, which is, by the way, run by Joe Biden, but they weren't transparent enough to come out with this before the election and say, oh, by the way, every American public, we screwed up here. And then secondly, now that they have appointed a special prosecutor, guess what? Every question they're getting, they are responding by simply saying, we're sorry, but this is an investigation, and
that's why they did it.
and we can't really comment on this story.
So why do it at all? So my question is, why do it at all?
Well, the investigation?
No. Why would Biden's personal attorney expose this in the first place?
I think he was afraid that they're going to find out. So
How they've ever found out?
I don't know. Unless
Locked away in his
they're
garage.
trying to get rid of him, but that's
It
his
was-
own attorney.
Yeah, I mean that's really the $10,000 or $50,000 question, as we may
Yeah,
say.
why'd they rat him out? Why didn't they just take him back?
There's been speculation on the part of not Republican right wingers, but on the other hand, left wing, let's call them progressives within the party, that this disqualifies Joe Biden from running, and that the same reason why it would disqualify Donald Trump from being able to run again, which was clearly part of their intent. It is now found out that the same thing would disqualify Joe Biden from running again, and now.
So the theory is by those that say this is a scheme, if you will, on part of some Democrats to make Joe Biden not eligible to run, is that somehow it got leaked out among certain circles in the Democratic Party that Joe Biden was in possession of classified documents in his garage, and someone went to Joe and said, Joe, you better disclose this, because if you don't, someone over there may know about it. We know some people that may know about it, and they may leak it. It'll make you look worse. Is that it?
We already know that the DOJ and the FBI meddled. There's no debate at this point. Meddled into and tried to influence the presidential election in 2016, right? So, or 20.
Both, perhaps. But
2016.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So that's already acknowledged. I mean, is it possible that the DOJ or people within the American government would be seeking to tip the scales against Joe Biden being able to run again now that he was on
But how would they even know the documents were there, though, Richard? That's the question.
Well, that would be potentially planted. That's what the speculation is.
Yeah, but they can't do that.
Planted
Yeah, but they
by
can't do that.
Democrats?
No, they can't
Maybe,
do
I
that.
doubt-
Hold on, they can't do that because
Doubt
they've already
it.
admitted
Maybe.
that they had them. So you can't say, yes, I had them, and they were planted at the same time. Joe, when he was talking the other day on TV, more documents fell out of his damn pants. I think what happened was, look, you have other kids that are troubled, right? He's got a troubled kid. Well, usually you set them up with a lemonade stand. Joe set his kid up with a classified document stand right outside of his house. That way, China and Ukraine and Iran can just come by the house, get some classified documents. Don't worry, got them right here in the garage. I think that's what was happening.
Pendo, what you're saying there is something that would be terrible and awful for our national security, but I don't think it's that far-fetched.
It's
I
not.
really don't.
I'm joking about the stand,
I think
but it's the same damn thing.
I think most people think that definitely Hunter Biden and perhaps Joe Biden, the big guy, are compromised, right? I mean, in some way, shape, or form. I mean, the Ukrainian board seat that he had, making $1 million a year, and now we're finding out that $50,000 a month in rent was being paid to Joe. I mean, this is
Yeah,
all
but hold on now. Hold
that's
on
a way to
second.
launder
Whoa,
the
whoa,
money
whoa, whoa.
up to
Yeah.
the big guy.
Yeah, but he is an expert in energy. He's lived in a house that had he's lived in a house that had electrical sockets. And he's got a power to his house, and he flips lights on.
Yeah.
You know,
And then the story leaked that Hunter won't even let his own daughter have his last name.
oh, did you hear that?
Which is just awful. Yeah, yeah. I mean,
Evil
we're-
much? I mean,
This
what
is
the
the
hell?
same.
we're
This is the
obviously
same daughter who, if you recall, not this past Christmas, but 2 Christmases ago, the Bidens were their first Christmas in the White House. And the first lady, of course, is in charge. Historically and traditionally, the first lady oversees decorating the White House. And there was stockings were hung by the chimney with care in the White House for each of the Biden grandkids,
Except for her.
except for the one that Joe Biden, I'm sorry, that Hunter Biden had with the stripper. And that one grandchild was omitted, even though all the others were hung up there. That child, who's equally as much of a grandchild as you know, as the rest of them are, biologically and legally. That's the same granddaughter which they now are trying to use the courts.
Well,
to
Jill Biden showed how evil she was.
And by the way, they took all those stockings down, by the way. When the press called them out on that and said, why is there one of your grandchildren omitted? They were like, okay, well, we'll just take all the stockings down. Instead of putting
they
those,
basically aborted her.
and instead of putting up one
30th
stocking for that
trimester
child,
abortion.
yeah, instead of putting up that one more stocking and saying, you know what, you're right. We do have one more grandchild and we should acknowledge her and not turn our backs on her just because we don't happen to think the best of her mother. They should have put up one more stocking. Instead, they took them all down and said, "Fine, we'll treat everybody equally. Everybody loses." It's very
That's right. That's
Jill
right.
Biden-
I mean, is that daughter not a human being?
Jill
I mean,
Biden already proved how evil she was when she did the weekend at Bernie's, let's get my husband to run for president. She should have been arrested for abusing the elderly. Get out there. I want my power. Get out there.
I think it shows the way the Biden, family, and frankly, a lot of people in his party view equality. That instead of treating,
oh, this is a great point.
Instead of treating that one child equally with the rest of them, everybody loses. So all the stockings come down, right?
It's communism.
That's the way that that's the way they see the world. Is if we don't like you, we just sacrifice everybody on the altar of,
kind of like in school, how they do with the kids now.
That
they make it where the kids can't bring in their own stuff. It's all communal.
Their definition of equality is everybody loses. That's basically
that is
Except for
a
them.
brilliant. That is a brilliant.
Except for them.
Okay,
They don't lose.
so obviously we're talking about people of unsavory characteristics, right? I mean, to strip your own daughter of your name. I mean, I don't know how worse it gets. So if he's capable of that, if the Biden family is capable of stripping down a stock, and not including a family member in the stockings and stripping them all down and stripping last names off family members, a thing of that nature, are they capable of taking, I don't know, suitcases of cash out of another country?
He videotaped the conception of his daughter with a hooker on drugs.
well, I
And
mean,
it's out.
who hasn't done that? It's
Yeah.
What's interesting to me is that back on this daughter, Joe, who clearly doesn't care for Hunter well enough to not charge him half $100 every month for rent. You would think that Joe and Jill would pull Hunter aside and say, "Look, some parental advice for you. Let's not do this to your daughter. Your daughter at this point is, I don't know, I think she's certainly under like 7, I think. I mean, I'm not sure exactly how old she is.
I think she's like 3 or 4 years old.
Yeah, I mean, so what has this girl done to deserve having her dad's
I don't know, but
name
she's
ripped away from her?
She's gonna.
It's horribly cruel. It's horribly cruel. And it just goes against every fabric of the human condition. I mean, it's just a terrible, awful thing to do.
She's
So I
4.
think that
Look it up. She's 4 years old. So what kind of, I mean, Hunter Biden, who has been on crack, used prostitutes, taking money from foreign governments, he still gets to use the Biden name. But this innocent little 4-year-old girl is being legally attacked in the court system to prevent her from using her father and her grandfather's name. Like, that's
it's terrible.
Yeah, but
It's
that
terrible.
Puerto Rican named
It's
Joe
terrible.
Biden, Hunter is the smartest guy he's ever known. That Puerto Rican
did
guy
say
named
that.
Joe Biden.
Joe Biden said that. I think this story is just going to get bigger. I don't think it's going away. I tell you, even the mass media cannot resist reporting on this. It's a massive story. I think it's just
But look how they're reporting on it.
I don't know honestly what Corn Pop would think of this, but I would think even Corn Pop would say you got to stand by your children. And
Even
yeah.
Corn Pop would
Yeah.
kick his ass.
Yeah. Well, okay. What story is bigger? That Hunter Biden is trying to not allow his own flesh and blood, his own daughter, not using his last name, or is it the classified documents being found in the Biden garage next to
Classified
the
documents.
I ask you, Crispin Darvis, which story is bigger?
Obviously classified documents. You're not going to go to jail for being a jerk to your daughter. You can go to prison for treason. So, yeah. Not only that, we just spent the whole summer attacking Trump, who had them in a safe, locked twice by the Secret Service and the FBI. They knew where they were. He was completely cooperating. Joe's had those things for 6 years.
That's the
He's only
difference.
cooperating
That's the
now.
difference. That's the difference. Trump was completely transparent about what he had and where he had it. Joe Biden was not.
Nope.
He was not.
And
So
he was the president.
it does beg the question. It does beg the question: why would he report himself? Why would he do it?
He didn't.
No, his attorney did it, which means he did it.
Well, Joe doesn't know where he's at. His attorney just did it.
You think?
I think it's very likely, back to my conspiracy theory here, that the media found out about this. They were going to run with the story. The DOJ did know. They were told. Now, why they were told, maybe somebody else was going to say, "Well, I'm about to tell the DOJ, or I'm going to go to the media."
Yeah, but Richard, the Department of Justice was just told in October 2022. He's had those documents since he was vice president. So he's had those documents for 6 years.
And around that same time, he was saying that he was considering whether he was going to run again. And after they did well in the elections, which they did, Joe Biden was rumored to say, "I've made a decision. I'm getting ready to run again." Now, he hasn't announced it yet, but he's been behaving that way. And all of a sudden, these documents come out. Would that be again?
But why? But why would Joe Biden have his personal attorney say, "Hey, raise your hand. I've got some stuff in my garage I may not should have"?
Because he would have had to have. Under my theory, he would have to have. Like, it was gonna come out one way or the other anyway. And
okay. So you think someone in the media found out about it and they're going to report it and Joe Biden felt he could minimize the damage by just exposing himself?
I think that this is being set up as a way to preclude Joe Biden from being able to run again and open the door for Hillary, Michelle Obama, somebody else on the Democratic side to make a run for it and get crazy Joe, Uncle Joe, out of the way.
Richard, every word you just said scares me to death. Starting with Hillary, Michelle, president, election.
Now, Michelle Obama, I think she could make a run for it. Hillary, no. I think Michelle Obama could be a contender.
I don't think so. Obama had a way of looking kind of cool, and he was kind of the cool guy in the room. Michelle is just an evil that hates white people. I don't think she's going to be able to hide that. Every time she talks, she exudes, "I sure hate some white people."
Well, what you just said is the Democratic Party right now. So what's the difference?
They're really
I don't necessarily agree with that's how she feels. I don't know how she feels about people, but what I would say is that she is an intelligent woman who most first ladies, when they come out of office, even our last first lady comes out of office being generally well liked. Hillary might be an exception to that rule. everybody liked Laura Bush. You know, everybody liked, Michelle Obama for the most part. They may disagree with her husband or her policies, but I think she could run again. I think she'd be a legitimate candidate for the Democrats. I think they would see that as a possibility. I am troubled more by the idea that our nation, whether it's the Bushes, the Clintons, or the Obamas, or even the Trumps, we don't need to have patriarchal families that are just in line and entitled to run for president because of your last name. Like, to me, I think that's foolish. I think it's unhealthy as a democracy. We're not a family of king and queens here in this country, and and I mean, honestly, I think there should be a rule or constitutional amendment that if you're, I don't know. I mean, if your family
president, because we have Sarah Huckabee that was just elected governor of Arkansas.
Yeah, I think for president, I think you can't just keep it in the family, and I know that there's been
as president. Yeah. Okay.
These, like I said, the Bushes. I mean, there comes a point where it's unhealthy to have families just own the presidency because of their connections.
Yeah, but that's also the stupidity of the American people to freaking vote for them. So
you get what you vote for. No question about it.
Okay, in other news, Marie Osmond, because Marie Osmond's still a big celebrity, right? Marie Osmond, she has announced that she is not going to leave one dime of inheritance to any.
Why would you announce that? Why would you?
I don't know if she was announcing. I mean, maybe she was asked the question, like, "Are you, what are you planning on leaving your kids?" She has 6 children. What are you going to plan on leaving your kids? And her answer was nothing. She said that her and her husband were going to spend it all, and the rest they're going to leave charities, and they're going to leave their children nothing. What do you think of that, Richard Sheffield?
Well, she's not the first. There are other celebrities that she joins the crowd with.
Didn't the Gates say that?
Daniel Craig, James Bond has said that. Don McClane, American Pie, has said that. Gordon Ramsay. There's a long list. Ashton Kutcher, Sting, from the
whoa. Ashton Kutcher said he's leaving his children penniless. Nothing.
He said that he sees some rich people as evil growing up, and that he doesn't want to subject his children to that.
So, meaning that when he dies and he owns, say, a real estate empire of $100 million, 0 of that goes to his children, all goes to a charity. Is that what that means?
Who knows? I don't know exactly what his financial plans are. And Gene Simmons from Kiss.
Really? He's leaving his children nothing?
Surprisingly so. Yeah, he actually said they will never be rich off of my money. He said, kids.
Well, I hate to tell him this, but his wife might have something to say about that.
Yeah, very, very well could. But he said,
what does that mean, though? Okay, so if say you were a child and you were, born into, and not just necessarily extravagant wealth, but let's say, very good wealth, and you were brought up to a certain standard that would be very difficult to duplicate. Because let's face it, I mean, you get to Gene Simmons' status of wealth, it would be very difficult for any of his children to be self-made as correct. So is it cruel then to strip away that kind of lifestyle that they were brought up in and leave them nothing? Or is that acceptable? Is that okay? Ask you, Chris Pendarvis.
If you raise your kids right, they're going to be fine whether they got the money or not. Paul McCartney raised his kids where they would get 50 cents a week as an allowance, and they had to work around the family farm. Dude's a billionaire, the wealthiest rock star in history. He's going to leave them his money, but he made them respect the money first. Now his kids all have their own careers. They have their own money, but he's not. I mean, he's going to leave them the money. It's the point of it. It depends on how you look. If you spoil the hell out of your kids and give them everything in the world, then yeah, they're going to be brats but you don't have to do that. You can raise them right and then still leave them your fortune, or most of it.
Okay.
If you don't do that, I think you're kind of a jackass.
Okay. So there's been probably one of the biggest wealth transfers in the history of the world is occurring right now. We have the baby boomers, who is the wealthiest generation in the American baby boomers. Okay. The American baby boomers is the number one most wealthiest generation in the history of the world. Number one. No one has more money per capita per person in one country than ever before than the American baby boomers. They're starting to die off. So this transfer of wealth that is going down to the millennials, that's the baby boomers' children, or the millennials, they are receiving lots and lots of money. So is this contributing? There seems to be a general consensus out there that millennials are lazy, whether it's fair or not, a lot of people tend to think that millennials do not have the work ethic that the baby boomers and Gen X has. Is it because these millennials know that they're just going to inherit a lot of money from their baby boomer parents, and therefore they really don't have to work all that hard? I ask you, Richard Sheffield. Is that contributing to the laziness factor that a lot of people perceive millennials to be?
Yeah, as a parent, I would tell you it's difficult because every child is different, right? I mean, so you could have, for example, a set of parents who have really invested in their life. I'd be curious to know how much time Gene Simmons has spent around his kids, raising them and, and teaching.
He actually did a lot, because I saw that reality show, The Family Jewels, with Gene Simmons.
That's not real.
His kids were in it.
Yeah, but that's just
maybe so. I mean, Marie Osmond, in her case, she has 8 kids and 8 grandchildren. So not all of them should be entitled to grow up and, say, for example, pay their parents $50,000 a month in rent. But on the part of
only if they've got top classified secrets.
I mean, look, I think if the stars are raising their children in a way that makes them great, productive members of society, and they want to, if it were my kids, I'd leave them a little bit. I'd leave them with, a house and enough money where they're not going to be necessarily, sort of struggling. But at the same time, I would rather they be invested in education, and when you want to see your kids earn a certain amount, have a work ethic, right? And not just simply to sort of be like a Hunter Biden and start painting and just sort of putzing around all the time and just live off of your dad's name. So
I think that's fair. I think housing and education, certainly education, being funded by parents, or in the education of the grandchildren, is very, very, very good. We want an educated populace. We want an educated society. What we don't want is a society of people living purely on handouts, right? I mean, inheritance is one thing, but I'm going to pivot a little bit to our next story. Do you think it's healthy for a society when you have all of society, or just one segment of society, receiving loads and gobs of assets and having to do absolutely nothing for it but exist? I ask you, Chris Pendarvis, is that healthy for society or not so healthy?
Sure. It's not going to matter. The stupid people will give it to the smart people. I mean, that's just how it goes. You could take all the money in the world and give it to the poor, and in about 6 months, the money would be right back where it was. The people that are smart, that are rich, know how to get your money from you. They will always get your money from you. And when you've got dumbass kids like we've got today with, oh God, I'm just so fearful for the planet. The smart kids will take the dumb kids' money from them. And that's okay with me.
Well, today it was announced that in San Francisco, the city council, there's a proposal that has been made to the city council by a committee to give each African American resident $5 million. And this is being actively discussed as a real thing. So I ask you, Richard Sheffield, is that a healthy and productive thing for the taxpayers of San Francisco to fund and pay for?
Yeah, I'm curious. Is this was this related to California's slave reparations, or
that's different? This is an addition to that. This is an addition to that. That'll end up being just a cherry on top.
Hey, how many slaves did California have?
No, I don't. I think it was like, was it zero?
I think it was 0.
California was a free state. Yeah, California was not a slave state during the Civil War or prior to the Civil War.
They weren't even a state during the Civil War, I don't think, were they?
But yeah, California is leading the reparations movement, and New York is right behind. So
That's going to start a civil war.
California is on the verge of handing all of their African American citizens not just hundreds of thousands of dollars, but millions of dollars merely for existing. So
Do it.
Richard, is this healthy for society in California? Is this good? Is this good for the residents of California? And if it is good, will this spread? Will this eventually spread to the rest of the country? And will it make this country better or worse? I ask you.
Yeah, I am one who does acknowledge that whatever you want to call it, systemic racism, that there has been a long history in the United States of call it whatever you want to, like where the haves versus the have-nots, or the whites versus the blacks, or whatever you want to say. It is difficult for most Black people in this country to accomplish certain things because of the history, not necessarily of themselves. And I'm not saying that it was done intentionally necessarily by any of us, but it's difficult, right? It's difficult, generally speaking, because of the last 300, 400 years for Black people as a whole to sort of start on average with other races. That's just fact. I had a friend of mine, Jan Christensen, who is a judge. When I was young, she had a conversation with me about affirmative action, and I had the sort of typical, like, oh, that's wrong, you should never have to discriminate against people. And she stopped and she said, look, it isn't the same. Like, most Black people that are born into poverty, or now I'm not saying Black people that are born into middle class, upper middle class families have, should be treated the same way. Now, with all that said, as a preface, $5 million to someone, I looked this up, what they're requiring is that for 10 years, you have to have identified as Black. Now, what means African American? I don't really know. I mean, so they're just saying publicly you've had to, on government records, identify as African American for 10 years, and without any other, sort of consideration, you just get handed a check for $5 million by the government.
I identify as Black.
Yeah, I know.
I'm Black.
It's insane. It's obviously, like this in its face. It's ridiculous. I mean, I don't know how they would afford it. Number one, of course they won't. That doesn't really matter. Number two, I don't know like what they think the benefit of that would be to society. It doesn't do anything to change society. Ultimately we improve each other's lives by being invested in each other's lives, not by just doling out government cash and taking it from one person to another. If that worked, then the Chinese would have the wealthiest and most prosperous populace because of communism. They don't. And to the point made earlier, the rich people in China have just gotten richer because of communism. It doesn't matter what the government tries to do. The way that you change the world is person to person. That's how I believe.
Well, Richard,
okay.
Hold on. Let me respond. Richard,
Okay.
You're a great guy, but I completely disagree with you on this point. There are people that come from Africa today that come into the United States, and they do much better than the Blacks from America. And the part of that is because of the culture of the Black American, such as don't snitch. If you try to do well in school, you're a sellout. If you have manners, you're a sellout because you're trying to be white. Now, those are self-inflicted wounds that we can't do anything about. And if they get reparations for being Black, I want all of those dead Civil War soldiers back from the dead. I want all of the money that we put into welfare for them back. I want all that money that like if we both go in to get a government loan, a Black guy and a white guy for a small business, he's going to get a much better deal than me because of the color of his freaking skin. That's racist. And quite frankly, I've had it up to freaking here with America's so bad, America's this the worst thing. If it's so bad, why are you trying to bring more people in if we're nothing but a big Nazi country?
It's and you can't obviously make broad declarations about a race any more than people would about.
I agree with that. I totally agree with that.
But I think if Tim's initial question was, is $5 million, is that even going to help? Is that really the right way of going about it? And obviously the answer is no.
Imagine being a white guy living next, and you've been friends with this guy next door. He's a black guy, and you guys are friends. All of a sudden, he gets a check for $5 million. You don't. He does. That's going to cause division. It's going to cause hatred, and you're going to kind of
because he's going to be moved to the beach.
What you're going to have?
Because that African American neighbor is going to be moving on up.
No, he won't be. No,
I got to be your neighbor anymore.
No, he will not have earned it. He won't respect the money, and within about 6 months, he's going to be broke again, and some white dude's going to have it.
Well, studies show that something like 95% of people that have some large liquidity event that they did not earn, such as a lottery winnings, as an example, that's the biggest example, a large inheritance, within 18 months, the money's all gone.
Yeah.
Within 18
months.
You
didn't earn it.
So,
you don't respect the money you didn't earn
it. Obviously, a $5 million award, for being a certain skin color is probably not helpful for a general society. But so therefore, if it's so obvious that this is just a farce, this $5 million proposal, is it just virtue signaling by the San Francisco City Council? I ask you, Chris Mondarvis, is this just virtue signaling?
Dude, they don't have the money. They just don't. I saw an article today on Fox News website. California is going broke. There's $62 trillion. I believe that's what it was.
No, not 62 trillion.
It was 600 billion. It was some ridiculous number that they're never going to be able to pay back.
Yeah, 600 billion, I think, is what it is. They're in debt. Yeah, almost $1 trillion, knocking on the door of $1 trillion.
I mean, for one state,
which is a lot for one state, which is a lot.
So anyway,
my theory behind this is that it's nothing but virtue signaling behind, that the San Francisco City Council is doing. They're trying to one up.
I'll tell you what.
State of California.
I'll tell you what. If I thought it would work, and all of a sudden that would fix all of the racial problems, and I would do it.
Hang on,
but it won't. It's going to make it worse.
It could. It has the potential to make it worse.
Imagine being Chinese or Jewish or some other ethnicity going, what the hell?
I'm gonna make a prediction. I'd like to ask you your prediction. I think this is some virtue signaling here, but I'll say this. I predict within 3 years, of today, there will be some form of monetary compensation for people based purely on skin color, and it'll be a significant amount, and that's my prediction. I would like to ask you, Richard Sheffield, do you think my prediction is more likely to happen or more likely not to happen?
Well, it's already happened. There have been reparations for American Indians, for Native Americans that were had to sacrifice property over time. Wrongs were done. The real question is, what's the right way for a society to affect change? Is it done best through the government, simply by taking money from one person and giving it to another person? And does that actually change things? Are the Native Americans any better off now than they were? The answer is no, obviously, rhetorical question, but does government solve problems or do people solve problems? And that's fundamentally, I think the point that all of us would agree upon is that if change is to be made, and today's Martin Luther King Day as we record this, change does need to be made in a lot of ways. The way that the poor are treated, or the way that that people are probably starting life, really good people who need help. What's the right way of providing help? Is it doling out millions of dollars to individuals by stealing money from other people? No, it's not. Is that the right way? It's actually, by encouraging and enabling people through charitable organizations, through religious organizations to
through education.
through an education system and get government out of the way and and empower those organizations and empower the people they're trying to help by getting the government off their back. Don't
Well,
In
you
tap-
can't do that. You can't do-
in other words, you teach a man to fish, he eats for life.
Yeah, but you can't do
You
that.
give a man a fish, he eats for one day. But I want to ask you more specifically.
Whoa, hold on.
Hang on,
The
Chris.
reason you can't do it today
hang on,
is the
Chris.
government and
I'll
the
give you-
education is the
I'll
same
let you
thing.
make your point, Chris. I'll let you make your point. Will a certain segment of the populace in this country receive a 5-figure or higher check from a state or federal agency within the next 3 years? Yes or no?
No,
Richard.
I don't think so. I think it would pay
Chris.
the government.
Chris, your prediction?
Well, for one,
Yes.
Richard's right in what he's saying.
No. Just yes or no. My
Look,
prediction. Just yes or no.
Yeah, probably. But
I think the answer is
hold
yes.
on, let me finish
But
this.
I
Hold on,
want you
I'm finished. I'm seizing power. Richard, you're right. I agree with you. The problem is that today, right now, our education system and our government is working in tandem against us. So I don't know where we would get the education from right now. It terrifies me, unless you go to like private schools or something like that. I mean, the idea is awesome. That would work. But I just don't. It's like they're the same thing now, and all they do is push propaganda. They don't even teach the kids anymore.
Yeah,
the public school system has become just another arm for the social.
But Richard's right about the sentiment. He's correct about what he's saying.
there's clearly a battle between buying votes of the elderly through Social Security benefits or buying votes from young people with waiving student loans. So
That was hilarious. That was funny. I knew they were going to renege on that.
I mean, but the point you make, Tim, is everybody else is getting in line and wanting to get some, and
Hey,
it's-
I'm British. I'm British. I want the Romans to give me a damn check. I want all the Italians to give me a check. I was oppressed. I'm Welsh. Hey,
Okay.
hey,
Well,
I get one
well.
from British too.
Okay.
Right.
California is beating the reparation drum so loudly. They're beating it so loudly. New York is right behind them. I think it's just a matter of time before it comes reality. And I think it will happen. To what level?
Sheffield.
To what
Richard, your
level?
last name is German, right?
my name.
Yeah, Sheffield. Is that German?
No, I'm about as English as I took a genetic test, and I literally came back as 99.7% English Irish.
Then the Italians
Wow.
throw you a check.
Wow, Lord
You were oppressed
Cromwell.
by the British.
We have a Lord
I mean, by the
Cromwell.
Romans. By the Romans. By the
No,
Romans.
there's a Sheffield, England. There's a city in.
Oh,
England.
that's right. You're right. You're right.
Yeah. So look, I think it's just it's a society where there is a lot of wealth, and the focus. If our society, the focus is grab what you can from other people as fast as you can, and do it through the government, and I'll vote for whoever empowers me to do that. We're lost. If the society is become clever, educated, work hard, believe in yourself, and that's how you're going to get rich.
That sounds like Florida.
Well, it's interesting because at what point does Texas have to pay back Hispanic immigrants for taking Texas away from the Mexican government at one point?
Well, but the Mexican government deserved it because they were oppressing everybody. And what happened was the Mexican people that lived in Texas teamed up with the white people that lived in Texas, and they kicked Mexico's ass. That's what happened.
Well,
they were trying to have a little, dictatorship. It didn't work. So
America is a business. It was founded on prosperity. That was the only reason the English came here, was for prosperity. America is a business. That's what we are. But it's going to be interesting to see what level it tilts on how to obtain that wealth. Do you obtain it from other people? Do you obtain it from hard work? How do you obtain it? America is all based on business and obtaining wealth and abundance. We'll see how it works out. Now, moving on to other news, we have another celebrity in the news, Scooby-Doo.
poor guy.
Scooby-Doo's in the news. Chris, you want to tell us about the latest on Scooby-Doo?
Oh, me?
Yes.
Well, it's dead.
What
Uh-huh.
happened? What happened?
Well,
before-
there's the show. What's her name? Mindy Kaling, I think is her name. She was the Indian girl on The Office.
funny girl. Funny girl.
Is she? I don't know. She wrote this.
What did she write? What did she
Well,
write?
she's basically, they gave her a new Scooby-Doo show to do. And instead, she called it Velma. She inserted her own. By the way, you're the worst writer on the planet when you self-insert yourself into your thing. The left does this all the time with the comic books. You know, I can only relate to someone that looks exactly like myself. It's like, whatever. So now, Velma is a bisexual Indian woman. Let's see. Daphne is a drug-selling Asian. Gee, that's not.
But this is
That's
supposed to
not
be for
insulting
children.
at all.
Oh, is this supposed to be for children, or is this an
Yeah,
adult
it's an
Scooby-Doo?
adult.
Where are you? Yeah, no,
It's an
this
adult
is the
theme
adult version. They're dropping, you know, like cuss words in it and
and sex and all kind of stuff. It's really gross. Shaggy is a black guy named Norval. He doesn't even sound like Shaggy. It's not Shaggy. And Scooby-Doo's not in the show. Doesn't exist.
Well, how do you have Scooby-Doo without Scooby-Doo?
I don't know, but you know what's funny? Everybody hates the show, including people on the left. You know why they don't like it? This will crack you up. When they saw it in the trailers and when the show came out, they thought this was created by conservatives to mock what a woke show would be. But it's not. It really is just a woke show. So everything's just, you know, the white people are evil. The black people are all
In
oppressed.
other words, it's so woke that leftists thought, "Oh my God, this is so woke. This is obviously in mockery of
That's
our."
exactly what they thought. So
Ah,
now it's got like a 5% rating on Rotten Tomatoes.
it was
Nobody
called,
likes
it was called racist and classist, which is here's the deal.
Yes, right.
It probably is racist and classist. And what it goes to show is that when you create entertainment that's designed to preach at its audience, nobody is happy with it, right? And it's important to, you know, maintain the spirit of Scooby-Doo, which I grew up watching during the 70s, was kids that were solving mysteries, not looking to, you know, to make their stamp on the world by, you know, defeating social injustices. And you know, they were trying to solve murders or kidnappings. Wait, was anyone ever killed on Scooby-Doo? Another thing.
No, it was all
Right.
all just a fake thing. It was always those darn kids. Oh,
Trying
my
to
God.
I would have gotten away with it if it weren't
Well,
for these
darn
meddling
kids.
kids.
But
And that
you know,
dog.
but going out of your way to set these characters up and then say one needs to be a lesbian, one needs to be Indian, one needs to be African American. It trashes the show before it even begins, and even people on every side of political views or cultural views, nobody will be happy when that's your goal. You know,
No.
just make a good program and the audience will come.
Well,
woke stars.
very well stated. Okay, so moving on to our sports category, the University of Georgia. The University of Georgia. Second national title in a row with a walk-on
Oh, and
quarterback.
and by the way, this national champion could beat last year's national champions.
And I will tell you, I think the Georgia team that's
Yeah,
coming back,
They
in
were better.
20
Yeah, I think this team was better than last year's. Good point.
the Georgia team coming back in 2023 is arguably going to be the best of the three.
Yep.
So
They made 3-peat.
Wow.
does it,
Okay, when was the last time a school or program on
Alabama.
no, 3 in a row? Did Alabama?
Nobody's done 3. Nobody has ever done 3. Not maybe in baseball, but not any of the football. No NFL team, no college team has ever won 3 in a row.
So this would
It's almost
truly be
impossible to do with
historic.
college because you've got so much in and out, in and out, in and out. It's hard to keep that going with a college. But I'm shocked that an NFL team has not done that. At least not in the Super Bowl. Maybe back in the 20s.
Well, what NFL team has won 2 Super Bowls in a row?
Steelers did it twice in a row.
They won 2 Super Bowls in a row.
74, 75, 78, 79.
They're-
Oh, okay, they did it twice. Steelers did it twice. Okay, fair enough.
So did San Francisco.
the Big Red
They did
Machine
the same
won
thing.
Big Red Machine won World Series in 75 and 76. I mean, it's not unheard of to do 2 in a row, but
Hey,
college,
has anybody won the World Series 3 times?
I mean, if I had to put money on it, my money would be on the Yankees.
I would think so. Yeah.
Who knows? It's but what I would say is that having done it twice in a row is impressive.
Yeah.
Kirby Smart in 6 years, the last 6 years, Kirby Smart has been to the national championship playoff 3 of those 6 years, won it twice, won 2 SEC championships, and won the East 5 of the 6 years.
And this is the
Amazing.
first time he made it to the national championship game.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. He's been there, three times out of the 6 years. So, so and the guy's young. The guy's 47 years old, right?
Yeah.
So, I was a happy, well content 47-year-old, but I did not accomplish what Kirby Smart has been accomplishing. But you know what? The guy's making bank. He won he got another $1 million this year for
The bonus.
national championship. Yeah. So
And doesn't everyone on the coaching staff get a big bonus
I'm sure
when you
they
get it when you win a national championship? Like the offense coordinator, the defense coordinator, the quarterback coach, all these
It's
guys.
probably everybody in the organization.
it depends on I think it depends on the contracts. And there's probably some limits as to what that means for, lower level staffers that are walking the hallway.
Yeah, then they'll all get $1 million.
But
Waterboy
still,
walking
what I think is interesting too is the controversy that has followed Stetson Bennett. I don't know if either one of you guys watched the parade that the Bulldogs.
I've heard a little bit about this, and I've actually gotten some feedback. My wife was telling me she had some friends that were there, and that that Stetson said something that was apparently kind of offensive.
Well, there were 2 things that happened. One is during the parade.
Can y'all see me, by the way? My phone rang.
No.
Can y'all see?
You disappeared.
Hang on.
Your tea is there.
Something about the phone rang, and for some reason,
Click it off. Like, do your thing where you're not. Hit the side button.
side button.
Doing this podcast with the 2 of you is like doing a podcast with my grandmother.
Well, I've got it right here.
I don't know what happened, but anyway, well, as y'all can, as long as y'all can hear me,
Well, just take us a minute. We can edit this out, right? So
just take your phone off, Tim. Turn it off.
I did.
Oh.
I did.
Scroll up and then scroll back in, or
Hey, hit your camera again. I bet that's all it is.
I did. I had the camera on and off. I should just turn my phone off during these podcasts.
Hold on. Let's see. Manage streaming. Well, hell.
I don't know.
You know what? Me and Richard don't need you anymore.
Yeah, y'all.
you got
Anyway,
you got to get
Let's
back.
talk about Stetson Bennett. Keep
All right.
going.
All right. So there were 2 things that happened on Saturday during the celebration of the 2022 national championship that involved Stetson Bennett. The first was that Stetson Bennett, during the parade, which isn't a particularly long route, was on his phone the entire time. Like, I don't know about the entire time, but he was on his phone a lot. So you hear kids calling out to Stetson, and he was literally just looking down at his phone, sitting on the back of like a convertible car, right, next to one of his teammates. So that was a little off-putting for people who said that their children were calling out to him, that he wasn't waving, he was like intentionally looking down. And there was famously a Channel 2 TV reporter who went up during the parade to go ask him some questions, and Stetson just ignored her. And she said, "Well, I guess they can't hear me," and then just sort of turned and walked away from him. That was sort of point number 1. Point number 2 was that when he was able to speak then during the ceremony at the stadium, some of the leaders of the team were invited to speak. Stetson sort of called out. Now, he wasn't real specific on who he called out. He just said y'all. And so he could have been directing that at the media. He could have been directing it at media plus some fans, or he could have been maybe making that towards everybody. But he basically said, none of you guys believed in me or in us. Yet we kept going.
Oh, he said that? He said he used those words?
Yeah, something to that effect. I'm not taking liberty with paraphrasing him, unfairly here. He said something along the lines of, none of you believed in us. We just kept going out and embarrassing people and winning. We won 57 to 3, we won this to that, named some scores. And he said, and then you kept saying that we weren't going to do it. We weren't capable of doing it. And you know what? Screw it. We won 2 championships, and that's all that matters. And then
Came across as a little arrogant. Is that it?
Yeah, and it was almost sort of like saying that none of you believed in us. I mean, it was aiming that a little liberally, if you might, towards whoever took it. Now, some people, to his defense, said, look, the guy won 2 national championships. He can say whatever he wants to, which, believe me, I'm grateful to him. And he's probably the greatest Georgia quarterback ever, not necessarily skill-wise, but maybe. And certainly as a leader, as the whole package, he did what nobody else could do. Matthew Stafford, David Green, Aaron Murray, Fran Tarkington, none of those guys did what Stetson Bennett did. But I think it's unfair to say that, nobody in the Georgia fan base backed Stetson or stood up for him or defended him, because that's not really right.
Well, but Richard, I think it is fair to say, though, there was a lot of grumblings from the Georgia fan base regarding Stetson Bennett the entire time he was the starting quarterback. And not only that, but even when he delivered a national championship, there was a lot of grumblings. Oh, gosh, I hope Stetson ain't going to be the starting quarterback. He did it last year, but there's no way he can do it this year. There was a lot of grumblings about that, you have to admit.
You had me up until that point. I think after he won, look, anytime you're the starting quarterback of a Power 5 school, especially one like Georgia, you will have people say this other guy could be better. It wasn't like we had, me and Chris and you trying out. We had 5-star quarterbacks behind him. And that's just the nature of being a quarterback at an SEC school. Now, once he accomplished the first national championship, I think there were really few people who still would have said Stetson.
I heard them. No. I mean, I heard them myself, and I would read about their posts on the boards.
That's an outlier, though. I mean,
but there wouldn't be most people for Georgia, at all.
Yeah,
but there were a few. There were a few out there.
Maybe a few. There'll always be a few idiots out there who say that
someone who named Kevin, someone named Kevin, he didn't want me to be star quarterback, right?
No, Kevin never said that he shouldn't be the starting quarterback. That's not what he said. He said that he wasn't like a top 5 or top 6 player.
Oh, okay. Well, nevertheless, it was an absolutely incredible season for Georgia, 15-0, the best record in the history of the university. And is it too early to call this a dynasty? I ask you, Chris Pendarvis.
Yeah, they got to win it next year. Then they'll be. You win 3 and within 4 years, you're a dynasty. I think they can be the first team in football history to win 3 in a row.
It'll be interesting to watch. Richard, do you think it's too early to call what Kirby's doing a dynasty?
Yeah, I think of a dynasty as being a more prolonged series of dominance in a sport. I think even if we get to the playoff again next year, that's a feather in the cap, right? And so I think, if we sustain this over, say, another 4 to 5 years, Georgia's already one of the most acknowledged, accomplished programs in the country. But do this another 4 or 5 years, and you get into the dynasty territory for sure. You don't have to win it all. You just have to win maybe 1 or 2 more, but a couple more SEC championships, recruiting classes where they've been, and it'll take care of itself.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, any final thoughts?
Real quick, if he wins 3 in a row and does something that no coach has ever done, ever, and then he doesn't win any more championships, does that make him the GOAT?
I don't know. That's debatable. I mean, I think you have to. I think, to me at least, a GOAT and same thing with dynasty is more of a little bit more of a prolonged. With that said, though, he would have been the most accomplished short-term, track record of any coach in history by definition.
Well, Saban has how many national titles? 6 or 7? 7. Okay, I think you have to get 8 national titles to be considered the GOAT, and Kirby has 2. So,
but he'd have to.
He's got a long way to go to be the GOAT.
He'd have to do more than that. He'd have to get 8 by 2 different schools.
He's got 6 rings, counting his 4 he got at Alabama as defensive coordinator. So, you know, I will add this to him, to the to our acknowledgement of a amazing season and a memorable day in Athens on Saturday. It unfortunately was simultaneously a tragic, Saturday evening, Sunday moment for not just the program but for the university, when there was an accident that took place that night, late into the night, really in Sunday morning, that took place in the Athens area. Car accident that took the life of a staffer, Chandler LaCroix, who had worked for the university's athletic association. She was 24 years old. And then a football player, Devin Willock, who was a player who was just finished up his sophomore year, I think, is 20 years old. He was from New Jersey. He and she both died in the accident. There were some others.
Well, there were 2 more in the car.
Yeah,
They were injured, but they're going to be okay.
Yeah, including McClendon, who was a offensive lineman who just declared for the NFL, was in the car, and his dad has reported that he's okay. But just tragic by all accounts. Yeah, but by all accounts, both people were.
By the way, how did that happen? It was a single car wreck, right? What happened?
I think that the initial reports were that it had to do with some traveling too fast, like most accidents are.
Just lost control of the car.
Yeah. And one, in fact, he died at the scene, and she died later on at the hospital. Just our prayers and thoughts at the Georgia community, all Georgia fans, and
dude, those roads are really windy around Athens. And I remember this was just recently. I mean, this was from, I was there for the UGA Kentucky game, and the driver was going way too fast. I said, dude, please slow down. And everyone was kind of giving me a hard time about it, but lighten up, whatever. But I mean, it's true. I mean, you drive too fast. I mean, bad things. And this was
were they on 78?
They were on Barnett Shoals Road, actually, which is a fairly straight road as far as that goes. I think, again, we weren't there, and it counted.
Oh yeah, I just don't know.
2 or 3 in the morning, but
something may have ran out the road, something may have,
anything could have happened. A deer could have come out the road.
Yeah, you never know. A quick story that I read or heard about Willock was that when he was in high school, he so wanted to be part of UGA's class. He was a 4-star offensive lineman coming out of high school, that he rode a Trailways bus or some kind of like bus down from New Jersey to Athens to get in front of the coaching staff and to make his case for being recruited by Georgia.
Wow.
And just apparently it's just a class guy, was doing really well in school and the best teammate. So, and this heart breaks for both of these families and for the university.
Our hearts go out to the victims of that car accident. Just a terrible tragedy. And it's just so bad. Car accidents. It's just among young people. It's got to be the top killer, right? Among people under the age of 30, car accidents. I mean, it's probably the number one. So,
don't say that. The Democrats will try to ban cars.
Right. So, all right. Okay, Chris, do you have any final thoughts before we conclude our podcast?
The
Beatles are great. The Beatles number one.
Beatles number one.
The Beatles number one.
Make sure you watch more documentaries on the Shroud of Turin.
I would argue, Richard Sheffield, and I'm going to ask you for this parting ways here. I would argue that of the top 10 bands, rock and roll bands,
Tim does this all the time.
the Beatles would be ranked number 1, number 2, and number 3. Number 4 would be Led Zeppelin. What do you think?
Well, certainly no argument for me. Being sort of an amateur rock historian, the Beatles, without question. Anyone that knows anything about, music history in the last 100 years has to acknowledge the Beatles place as number 1. I mean, this is not debatable. And if you do debate it and you try to put Taylor Swift or someone in there, you're just an idiot. I would say that in my mind, at least, probably it all depends on we get the songwriting, but the Beatles. I'm a big Pink Floyd fan. I think Pink Floyd, for their innovation is probably
Great
number 2 or number 3.
Great
Zeppelin,
band.
Who, the Rolling Stones, obviously. I mean, there's the sort of usual suspects. Once you get past the top, say like 6 or 7, now you're into territory like the Kinks, bands like that are
How about the Eagles?
tremendous. U2, for their
How about the Who?
The Who. I mean, the Who's a big Who fan. So yeah. So, but the Beatles number 1 for sure.
You
Well,
guys,
I'm gonna make a little. I'm gonna
I
make
guess
this.
you
kind of
forgot
fun.
about the Archies, didn't you?
Oh, the Archies. I'm gonna make this fun. You say Pink Floyd is number 2, and I respect that. I put Pink Floyd about number probably 6. They're definitely top 10. I'm gonna say that the Beatles from 1962 to 1965 was far superior than the Pink Floyd's entire career, and I'll prove it. You go ahead. You name a great Pink Floyd song, and then Pendo and I will name a great Beatles song that can't go past 1965, and we'll see who can name the most songs. You can go first.
I'm not arguing the Beatles would be eclipsed by Pink Floyd. That's not what I was arguing. Now, I already said. I mean, I just got through saying Pink Floyd. I'm sorry, the Beatles are questionably number 1, and that anyone who would debate that is a fool. What I'm saying is that, look, I mean, 2, 3, 4, 5, you're dealing with Zeppelin, Pink Floyd, the Rolling Stones, the Who. I mean, you're dealing with some amazing bands.
You're dealing with amazing bands, but my point is the strength and the talent of the Beatles is so far exceeds everyone else that I can stack up their career from 1962 to 1965, not even including great albums like Sgt. Pepper, Revolver, the White Album,
Ted,
Let It Be,
he's
Abbey
not
Road.
agreeing.
Forget all those masterpieces. Forget all
you're-
those. Just
you're-
shelve them.
Tim, you're
I'm
cynical
saying
comment here.
that-
I'm not arguing with you. I agree with
Okay.
you. The Beatles are unquestionably number 1 because of their innovation. I think because of their willingness to experiment, their willingness to reinvent themselves, their songwriting capacity, their vocal skills. I think, musician-wise, look, I would argue that
Middle of the pack.
I would argue that John Entwistle of the Who is a better bassist than Paul McCartney is, but Paul McCartney, between his voice, his creativity, his willingness to have the magic, to put it all together, their ability to invent a lot of innovations, and that the Beatles were light years ahead of everybody else. Light years,
and they're so light years ahead that their career eclipses Pink Floyd's 3x.
Look, I mean, yeah, again, you're arguing with somebody who's disagreeing with you here. I would tell you that I think if one is to say Pink Floyd between Dark Side of the Moon, Wish You Were Here, Animals, and The Wall, those 4 albums,
Great album.
That span would compete equally with the Rolling Stones or the Who, or the Who with Tommy.
No, I agree. I agree with that.
Yeah, I mean, so I think that's where the debate, the fun happens, where you start debating like 2 through 6 or 7. That's
where it gets a little hazy, because you've got the Beach Boys.
I named them a minute ago. You might have heard me, but the Beach Boys are in.
You did name Beach Boys. I mean, it's a great band.
The Beatles, by far, though, did have the greatest 3-album run.
Spinal Tap. I mean, Spinal Tap could be. Spinal Tap is in your top.
Okay, Chris, what 3-album run? What 3-album run are you referring to?
Rubber Soul, Revolver, and Sgt. Pepper.
Yeah, that was a good 3-album run. But what about Magical Mystery Tour and the White Album?
Mystery Tour was
and Abbey Road?
That was made from the album, from the movie. They didn't really go into the studio and make Magical Mystery Tour.
Yeah, that particular album is not a great example, but
but it's still a great album.
Yeah, but half the album is just songs that they already did.
Okay, all right, okay. What about White Album, Abbey Road, Let It Be?
What's interesting about
you don't
those
think
albums,
that's a better trio than
what's interesting about those three albums is you are effectively during that era, you've detached the magic that happened between McCartney Lennon's collaboration, and they're writing songs independently of one another. It's still putting out arguably the best music the world's ever seen. So I do think that those albums were not as special as the ones that Chris named, because McCartney and Lennon were, I mean, they were on speaking terms, but they weren't really on collaborative terms. I think that hindered those albums and probably held it back from being what it could have been, but they were still amazing and better than anything else being put out during that time.
Yeah, no doubt. Okay. Greater musical accomplishment. Beethoven's Fifth or Sgt. Pepper? Ask you, Chris Pendarvis.
It's got to be Beethoven's Fifth. He was deaf when he did it.
Yeah. I mean,
now, as far as culture changing, then yeah, I'm going to give it to Sgt. Pepper. But when it comes to musical ability, dude, he was deaf. He wrote one of the greatest symphonies in history.
yeah, I think
A symphony is like an album.
when you're talking about,
definitely an album.
I was recently in Dublin and was outside the location where Handel wrote Messiah, and you can't compare. It's just a completely different animal. You can't compare that type of music to a day in the life, right? I mean, it's just a different genre of music. But with that said, though, if one were to sort of stand up in the Mount Rushmore of musical genius of all humanity, Beethoven, Mozart, and the Beatles are, I know there's 4 Beatles. You can't give them all 4 spots, but, if you've got 4 slots, the Beatles would be one of those slots.
You'd have to take Lennon and McCartney and meld them into one head, and then you get 3 other people.
Yeah, you got to cheat somehow, but you know what I mean.
Because it was them together that made it what it was. And then you've got Mozart, Beethoven, Bach,
Yeah, the question I have is
Cosby the news.
Would I mean, one of the big, I mean, we could debate this all day long or talk about it all day long, but would the Beatles have been what they were without Martin, without George Martin, behind the,
or without Brian Epstein?
They wouldn't have had a contract without George Martin. I mean,
they wouldn't have had a contract without Brian Epstein either.
No, but Brian was turned down by every single record company in the country twice. And it just happened to be, he was just about to give up. And he was at EMI, and George Martin came walking behind the door and heard that tape that Brian was actually playing for somebody else. And he asked Brian to come into his office. He talked to him, and that's where it all started. If he hadn't heard that tape, we never would have heard of the Beatles.
That's amazing. And if it wasn't for Brian Epstein's persistence to keep going and keep going and keep going, we might not even know who the Beatles are today without Epstein, and certainly without George Martin. So,
however,
it was a special group, no question.
I do think Elvis could have made it without Tom Parker, because he was already halfway there. He already had songs being played on the radio. He was already being noticed. He didn't need Tom Parker. He was going to be huge anyway.
He
Tom Parker just came
Tom Parker the loyalty, though, didn't he?
Look. What I will tell you is that the importance of both Brian Epstein and George Martin is that you know who they are, and the Rolling Stones, the Who, the Beach Boys. You probably can't name comparable people in their circles, right?
That's true. We don't know who their manager is. We don't know who their producer is.
Yeah, that tells you that tells you the level of importance that Martin and Epstein had.
I mean, hell, and Derek Taylor, their press secretary. He's probably the most famous press secretary in the history of rock and roll.
No doubt about it. I mean, that is a well-known name, Derek Taylor. Who is the Rolling Stones press secretary? We don't know.
I have no idea.
Okay, well, this concludes another fabulous and insane podcast.
We're crazy.
I can see why. I can see why the listenership is under, 2 digits. But I hope that.
Hey, my mom listened.
I hope that that I contributed. I will also say that any views expressed in this podcast are mine only, and I do not necessarily endorse for the sake of my employer, clients, and friends and family, that of Chris or Tim's. But everyone is entitled to their opinions, and I
In
appreciate.
other words, please don't fire us. Please don't fire
Really nice
me.
meeting you.
Don't fire Chris. Don't fire Richard. Please don't fire any of us, and please do not be a customer of ours just because of this
I'm a
podcast.
graphic
Thank
artist.
you.
I don't get fired.
I belong to the Jackie Moon school of philosophy of everybody love everybody. If you guys are familiar with one of my favorite.
All you need is love.
No, I know who you're talking about. I know who you're
Okay.
talking about.
Till next time, gentlemen.
Hey, Richard, nice meeting you.
Cheers, guys. Both of you. Enjoy it.
Stay insane. Stay
And thanks
insane.
for being on. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure, man. All right. Thanks, guys.
Later, guys.
Stay insane.
Okay.
I don't know how to do this.
This is
Yeah, I'm
stop.
still an idiot. See?
There could be a stop recording button.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure that out. Oh, there it is. I think I've got it. Manage recording. Stop recording. Later, Richard.
Look up my Instagram account. It's Sheffield Art House.
Everybody calm down. Oh, there we go. There we go. You got to.
I'll actually bring up, let me just do it. This might be easier. So follow my Instagram account. So
Oh, yeah, that's it.
I picked up art a few years ago, and if you'll see, like, this is a painting I did.
Yeah. Oh, looks good.
And then you can see how big this one was.
Oh, yeah. Wow. Did you paint all that?
Yeah, I'm just self-taught. I did this one at the Georgia Theater for a friend.
Wow.
Um,
I like that.
then I did did this one.
Oh, my God. It's Obama Bulldog. Obama dog. It's the commie dog.
Yeah, so I've
I like that.
done different animals for people.
Those
So
are cool.
so when they send me like a picture of their dog, then I'll use that picture and then paint, something like that. So
If you get a chance, check out my website, the Insanity Island thing that the podcast is on. Insanity Island,
yeah, that's the name of your podcast or your
the channel.
okay.
Like they do youtube.com/Insanity Island, all one word. Go past the podcast, go to click all videos, and we've got like 5 or 6 years of us putting Obama down with cartoons. But they're animated cartoons. They're all right-wing, animated, voice impersonations. As a matter of fact, we do all, I do the Obama and all the stuff that we do. But we got to Joe Biden, and I just thought he was so stupid that, and this is years ago. This I'm an old guy thing, he's just an idiot. We didn't know how to do him properly because nothing sounded stupid enough. So I just started spitting, and I would use subtitles for him, for Joe. So if you like right-wing animated cartoons, go back and check out what we did with him.
Absolutely. Yeah, I've Tim would tell you I've worked on political campaigns since I was a kid. Literally like 12 years old working on governor campaigns. And when I was in college, I took time off from UGA and went to go work for Johnny Isakson when he ran for governor. Later worked on the senatorial campaign. So I've been involved in like politics my whole life and like it a lot, but have never done anything professionally. You just can't earn a living doing it. So,
well, then you'd love our cartoons.
So yeah, I've always been a big history buff, and
well, you'd remember them. You remember the Obama years, right?
Oh, of course, yeah.
Then you would get the, you'd understand the scandals that we were mocking.
Well, yeah. I mean, look, I grew up as a kid watching, talk shows like the McLaughlin Group, or I mean, and people. Anyway, long story short is I've been a big current affairs buff ever since I was a kid.
Yeah, I got into that in 1979 during the Iranian hostage crisis.
You know what? Funny you bring that up. I would tell you, check this book out. It's my favorite. I'm a huge history buff. I've got a whole wall full of books over there that are all history. My son's middle name is Lee, after Robert E. Lee. Big Civil War buff, big World War II buff, big Eastern Theater. But my favorite book of all time is a book called Guest of the Ayatollah. It was written by
Oh yeah.
It was written by a guy named Mark Bowden, who also wrote Black Hawk Down and wrote Hunting Pablo. He's a great writer, and he wrote a book about the history of the Iranian hostage crisis. And it was a great book. Like, it's pretty thick, but it's by far one of the best. Like, when people say, like, what book would you say read? That's the book I would say, because I closed that book up understanding far more about why it happened, how it happened. I thought Carter came across like an idiot. Interestingly,
I can teach a course on that.
Bowden, who was the guy who founded Delta Force for purposes of rescuing the American hostages, played football at UGA for Vince Dooley.
Oh, cool. Yeah, that's what got me into politics, was Jimmy Carter ruining the country. And I think it was in 9th grade when the hostage crisis hit. And I was just so embarrassed to be an American at that point. And I was just a kid.
I'm 54. You're probably what, 56?
Yeah.
So,
that thrusted me. Somebody's calling me. I think it's my mom.
Well, I'll let you go. It was really nice meeting you, and
Hey, you too.
hopefully I get to come back. So
Okay, yeah. Later,
All right.
man.
See ya. Bye.
See ya.